today to duly and faithfully carry out our duties to the best of our judgment and ability for the advancement of this district and the benefit of all of our community and fellow citizens. And the Coorong District Council members acknowledge and pay respect to the traditional custodians of the land and waters, the Ngarrindjeri people, whose ancestral lands are on which we meet today. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and relationship of Aboriginal people to country and pay our respects to elders past and present. We also extend that respect to all First Nations people. Thank you, councillors. Item 1 is apologies. I have Councillor Bland is now an apology. I would note that Councillor Quammen will be a late arrival to the meeting. We can get him online in a minute. So I'm just going to go round to each of the other councillors, if we could please, and just confirm that you can hear me and we can hear you. So I'll start with you, Councillor Hill.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yep, beautiful. Thank you, Tracy. Councillor Yench.
Yes.
Beautiful. Thank you. Councillor Rountree.
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you. Councillor Arthur.
Yes, I can hear you, Paul.
Beautiful. Thank you. Councillor Ling.
Loud and clear.
Beautiful. 1, 2, 4, 5. And Councillor Taylor is actually in the chamber today. The people who can see on the vision, we've got our 2 directors and Councillor Taylor spaced out, and we're spaced out at the front table here. And Councillor Quammen will join us soon, so that makes 9. That makes 8, isn't it? Yep. Thank you for that. As everyone's aware, we're in COVID lockdown as of 6 o'clock tonight, so I trust the meeting will not go that long. I might ask our CEO just to give a brief outline of where we're at in terms of the operation of this council for the next 7 days.
Things moved pretty quickly from yesterday. Yesterday there was a meeting with the Premier and he announced that it was level 4 restrictions. And as you know, that was around wearing masks in places where you couldn't socially distance. It was about essential services. Things like hairdressers and non-essential businesses were closed as of yesterday. This morning, overnight, there was another case. So there are now 5 cases in South Australia. And the Premier moved early this morning in a broadcast which was public, to move to level 5, which is basically a complete lockdown. The difference between this time and last time is a couple of things. One is, as you would expect, they are much more organised in terms of what each level consists of. And also the very big difference from this time to last time was the intent is much stronger. The intent is to limit movement. So the intent is to not be out and about unless it's essential, and it's very clear what essential services are. And as you would expect, it's around things like shopping for food, medical appointments, a little bit of exercise, but that's about it in a sense. And based on that fact, we looked at our local government can be essential services, but again, the reminder was very strong that it's about the intent of the closure, which is to limit movement. So we have been very, and if you can work from home, you work from home. So all of our staff are being prepared as we speak around their ability to move their work back to their home. This is not new for all of the inside staff. For the outdoor staff, there are things that they can do, which is around some training to catch up. We are expecting at the end of this week to have some severe weather, so we will have staff on standby to do what we do generally, which is around trees and water and those sorts of things, and we'll be taking it one day at a time. The office will close, but anybody who rings the council will get through to a staff member who will answer their inquiry or find the right person to do that. We have talked to all our volunteers to make sure they're aware of the changes and what's expected of them. The overriding theme was that the next 48 hours are critical in a sense. I think there's a hope that it will remain at 5 cases, but probably a consideration that if it starts to move or continue to move upwards in the numbers, the 7 days may not be sufficient, but at this stage, most of the conversation has been that it's hopeful to remain at the 7 days. So any questions around that? So we will send a note out to staff that we already have. We will also make sure that our Facebook pages are up to date, that our websites are up to date, with the expectation that things are slowed down and that there is no movement as much as we can help it. Of course, we will continue to do some essential services such as the bin collections, which are considered a health risk, the cleaning of public toilets. We will close some of the public toilets that aren't on main highways, the ones that are, for example, the one in Meningie at the CCI, which is not a first, I suppose, usage. If there's no movement in the community, we don't expect the use of toilets to be high, but we know on the highways there will still be quite a bit of activity because freight will still continue to move to some extent.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors?
Yes, if I may.
Councillor Lang?
Toilets, I was just wondering, with the closure, is the Narung campground and also the Canalpin camping ground toilets going to be restricted or closed?
They will remain open because there will be some time. I suppose the lesson learned from last time is that there were some people, remembering the intent is to help people stay put. We don't want to be moving people on if they're actually camping there on a 3 or 4 day basis. So there'll be no intention to move people on if they are at those facilities. But it'll be, in a sense, we won't do anything. They will just be as they are without moving people on.
But we'll have staff going to them cleaning on a regular basis?
They will be part of the regular basis cleaning, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
At this stage, we don't have a strong compliance role. I suspect it'll be that the state health and the police are relying on the goodwill of people to come in line with what's expected of them to help control the outbreak. But there will be times where we may, if our staff are out and about, we may have to remind people they shouldn't be in the playground or wherever they may be at this stage. But it's much more gentle approach to the compliance, but a strong view that the intent is that people stay put.
Beautiful. Ashley, have we got Councillor Qualman joining us?
I can see him.
I can see him too. We'll just technology up. Councillor Qualman, can you hear us? When you unmute, you'll be able to hear, I'll be able to hear you. We've just lost him.
No, he's still here.
He's coming back. Let's give him the mute button.
Yeah, can you hear me now, Mr. Mayor?
That's very good when you unmute, Councillor. Welcome.
Yeah, sorry about delay, Mr. Mayor.
So we need to move something so we haven't got a big reflection right in my eye. Mitch will know what to do.
So if you want to
Okay, councillors. Yeah, no, you blokes are going to get it sorted just fine, I reckon. Thank you, everyone. I might just talk briefly, councillors, at this stage. Technically, we would have been meeting the 4 nights of this week and a night last week around our business plan with the public, which they've all been cancelled due to this public health decision. At this stage, it's going to be extremely awkward, if not impossible, to reschedule them. Technically, we should close public submissions this Friday for our budget and meet next Tuesday. I'd encourage all councillors and all public that are listening, if they wish to have a say to your councillors or direct to council online, drop it in paper, whatever method you can come up with. Unfortunate that we've been caught out because we would have loved to do the public meetings this week, but we can't see how we can fit that in now within only 1 week lockdown, let alone if it's extended. And to the councillors and the public, I'd be anticipating not having the special meeting next Tuesday. We'll just see how we go with that. But we still technically will be in a full lockdown at that point now. So we'll see if we can defer that till later in the week. So perhaps if you're unavailable late in the week, perhaps you could just email the CEO, please, around that. But I just encourage the public to speak to your councillors about your issues with the business plan, or to speak to someone or do something. Because unfortunately we're caught in this little bit of a gap. Thank you, everyone. Acknowledgements, councillors. Councillors, be aware, but not everyone, that after nearly 2 years with council, our Director of Corporate and Community, Deb Brokenshire, is going to move on, and she's in the, you can wave, Deb, you're in the camera today. So she's moving on into some private consultancy and local government. And so, what was a difficult time for this council, I thank you very much for your time with us, and I wish you well in where you're going, which is sort of still trying to keep people like the Mayor in line with meeting procedure and other things like that. You don't want to say anything, do you?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just would like to thank everyone for putting up with me, I guess, during this time. I know it can be a bit overwhelming with all the governance, but I do appreciate everyone was accepting of it and keen for some tightening up of governance, etc. It has been a really great experience for me. So, yeah, I just want to thank Coorong District Council and our staff who are amazing as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb, very much. And just in general, I'd like to thank the councillors for the last few weeks. It's been pretty hard work for me as the mayor, and some of you have stood in for different functions for me. So I really would like to thank you for that on sometimes very short notice. I move on to confirmation of the minutes of the 29th of June, 2021. Does someone move that way, please?
Yeah, I'll move that way, Mr. Mayor.
Councillors Arthur and Rountree is who I've seen first, and I'm looking at a screen now. Councillor Arthur, you didn't got anything to say?
Nothing to say.
You say anyone else got anything in relation to confirmation of those minutes? There being not, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? I'm going to carry that unanimously, please. We move on to adjourned business. We have none, but councillors, there is an item in the agenda. It's item 16. I wish to defer that item to the following ordinary meeting, if we may, please. If you have any questions around that item, please ring the CEO. It's not considered urgent at this stage. Is everyone happy? Councillor Yench.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Due to the fact that I don't have a hard copy of the agenda and I'm not able to see the agenda, what is that item, please?
It's an item in confidence, councillor.
Right, that's fine. I just wanted to verify that that was the item. Thank you.
Which brings me to, are you able to follow the agenda? Are you following the agenda in writing? Have you got
I have some material, Mr. Mayor, but not a lot.
Righto. No. So that's why I'd like it adjourned, to be quite honest.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Arthur.
Yeah, I'm also in a situation where I haven't gotten a written copy of the agenda, because I've come over here very unexpectedly on Monday. So I'm just going on what you're going to put forth so I can hear.
Okay, well, I'll try and keep in mind for everyone's benefit that I've got to talk more.
Yep, thank you.
Or explain more. That's probably where I'm at. Okay, minute action list, councillors. Is there any items you have out of the minute action list? Councillor Rountree.
Thank you, Mayor. 09821, discussing the placement and costs of a standalone toilet and septic. The response from staff was that a high level estimate of 150 to 200,000. The canal from pool revamp isn't probably going to cost that much, and our own septics at home are around 20 grand. So I would just like to see more explanation given as to why a standalone toilet and septic was going to cost that much money, or action as to getting some proper costings. I think the idea has merit, and I believe that figure is in there. Maybe put us off of wanting to do it, but it just seems extraordinarily high.
Yep. So through you, Mayor, given that we're also we haven't done any exact costings, you're right, Councillor Rountree, but we also know that there's connection issues as well. It's not like we can drop some toilet in there and the connections are there as we want them. So it's a little bit more underground work than we probably would, that we need to appreciate. But what if it's okay with council, is to look at, we have a request from council to look at upgrading the playground in terms of the fencing and a little bit of work there. We thought we may do it all in the one costing, and so we have a complete, I'll say, refurbishment of the playground rather than doing it piecemeal, if that works.
So through you, Mayor.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm happy with that, but I think the proposal was for a standalone, and I don't believe standalone septics need to be connected into any facility, do they? Just connected to the actual, I mean, we have septics here and they're not connected to anything. So I think that's what the original motion was looking at, I believe, but maybe not.
Through you, Mayor, the Director.
Director Matt.
Yeah, through the Mayor. A standalone septic would still need a soakage trench. A CWMS scheme requires a septic and then also a connection to a sewer system. So there's issues in that regard. With regards to the cost of the toilet, in my previous roles, I've been involved in putting numerous public toilet facilities in place, and 150 to 200,000 is around about the mark. Several toilet blocks, well, for example, the one that we've just built across the road from the council chambers is north of that figure. So it's not a cheap process. A public toilet isn't a normal domestic construction and requires DDA compliance and other things. So we're happy to put a more detailed cost estimate together, but that's around about the mark you'll find it will be.
So just on that, Mayor, we had 6 toilets built over there, replacing the existing one for 300,000, and we're looking at one that's upwards of around the 150 to 200,000. I would like to see a breakdown of that. I just think that's an astronomical cost for one toilet.
So you may, we will do the costing, and we'll include it in that whole costing of the playground rather than doing them, as I said, piecemeal. We'll make it sure that it's so we'll get some economies of scale, hopefully.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Sorry, questions out of the minute action list, we're in, sorry. Councillor Ling. Demute, please.
Sorry. Yes, old action 213 of 16, the road closures at Wellington East, which council has deemed to be closed. I'm just wondering what authority the executive took to close this action. All the allotments of land were to be sold, and the proceeds used for the public toilet block at Wellington East Reserve, which is still waiting to be built. We've only sold 2 blocks, and the executive have taken it upon themselves to close a motion of the council. Please explain.
So councillors, I sent an email to all of you with that information. It's appropriate that they can go into a public document, but that issue has been answered in an email that went to all of you probably 2 weeks ago.
You received that email, Councillor Ling?
I have, and I don't believe it's appropriate. I'd like a stronger answer. Perhaps a written response or a written request will be forwarded.
So you believe that the blocks of land should still be on the market?
That is correct, per the motion. And we have not met the obligation of that motion. So why has it been closed?
While the minute's closed, I don't know if the motion's closed. Is that what we're referring to? I think we just probably, all right, we need to follow up with the CEO around this.
Correct.
And I think that my memory serves me correctly, that email advised that money raised from the sale of 2 of the 6 allotments would go towards park rejuvenate, or the new park, including toilets at Wellington East. Is that your understanding?
Yes.
I'm asking Councillor Ling, is that his understanding of what will happen?
Sorry, no. This motion was passed long before the federal grant was received under the drought funding. The sale of 6 blocks of land, per the motion, should have was expected to have netted at least 150,000, which would have gone to the full building of the public toilet block there. Someone is jiggling the books. Sorry.
I reckon that's not quite fair, Councillor. Matt, I'm going to look to the Director. In the plans for the East Wellington Reserve, there would still be a toilet block built. At this stage, we were proposing a contribution of the approximately 55,000 from the sale of these 2 blocks of land, Council's contribution to that park rejuvenation. Is that roughly what you understand?
I believe so. I'm not I don't completely understand.
Yeah.
Aware of what the makeup is, but
I'm trying to find that now, because I think that process of that park is now heading towards procurement at this stage. So, Councillor, I think if I was to sort of answer you, I understand what you're saying about the minute for the sale of the 4 blocks is still an option, or should be happening. But I think the available money out of the grant will probably cover the building of the toilet, given our previous conversation, and still build the park. That's the way I understand what's going to happen.
There is no reason why those blocks or there is authority to withdraw the blocks from sale. It's no cost to the council to leave them on the market with Coorong Realty or whoever was doing the sale. And they need to be placed back on the market.
Okay. CEO's is looking for that now.
Through you, Mayor, I can't tell you when they're withdrawn from the market. Our records show that there was very little interest after those first two were sold, and that was some years ago, and they were then removed from the market. I think removed is probably the wrong word, though. I suspect they just lapsed in terms of interest. So those 4 blocks are still sitting there.
And Councillor Jentsch, you want to add to this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Seeing that this was generated from a question without notice by me at the last meeting, I concur that the blocks need to be reinstated on the market and sold. I agree that the money that we currently have should be put towards the new toilets. There is infrastructure, I believe, in the ground for those toilets that was placed there by the developer. So in my opinion, the motion still stands that this money should be spent at Wellington East. If this project, when this project is finished and the toilets are, it still may give opportunity for the remaining monies to be utilised for the benefit of the residents of Wellington East, as was the initial intent of the motion. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else put anything around this? Councillor Roundtree?
Not around that particular subject, but
No, I'll just finish this. So,
okay.
Councillor Taylor, sorry, Councillor Taylor's in the room. Thank you, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor. The original intent was to sell the land in order to create toilets, I believe. I think that's the wording. So as the toilets have been funded by other means, I didn't think the wording of the motion was to sell the land and if toilets weren't to be built, to spend the money on something else. Therefore, don't we need a different motion altogether? So in effect, that motion has been met, even though only 2 blocks have been sold. 4 blocks are remaining. There's no point in putting them on the market if the market isn't picking up. There's no absolute need to sell the blocks if we don't have a project in place on which to spend the money. And therefore, I would query the issue of putting the blocks on the market at all at this point in time. It's obvious from the reduction in sales at Wellington East that not very much is currently moving. So perhaps it would be better to put those blocks now into the growth strategy, which will of course include the entire district, but obviously the growth strategy will include Wellington East. So we should be looking at putting those blocks into the growth strategy now, given its original intent was to build the toilets. The toilets are being funded by other means.
Given we're in the minute action list, councillors, I'm going to read out the email that the CEO sent to us as councillors on the 14th of July. At the recent council meeting, Councillor Jentsch asked how many blocks at Wellington East have been sold. And this is for sale by council. The Mayor took the question on notice. Attached is the report to council in March 2017 that authorised the closure of some roads in the conversion, and my screen has disappeared off the face of the earth. Got penguins, got passwords, councillors. Sorry about this. As a result of this process, 6 blocks were created and 2 have been sold. These sales took place in December 2018 and January 2019 for the net sales prices of $33,154 and $33,151 respectively. The cost to close the roads was borne by the developer. Therefore, the net proceeds from the sale resulted in a net gain to council of $66,305. The motion from March 2017 also speaks to use of the sale of the lands to go towards the development of the Wellington East Reserve. As you know, a grant of $450,000 from the Murray-Darling Basin Economic Diversification Process was received for this project, and council's contribution is $50,000. $50,000. This, in essence, will come from the $66,000 sale of the land that we've already sold. So that's the answer to that question on notice, councillors. I take Councillor Leng's point that the question is, should it be removed from the action list? Because a council minute is not in the action list does not mean that it's not still valid. Right, sit, but I hope that answers most people's queries around this process thus far. Next question will be Councillor Roundtree at this stage. Or minute action list, sorry.
Thank you. Minute 06721 regarding Fred's Landing. The comment is that the Fred's Landing will be included in the upcoming growth strategy. Do we know when this growth strategy meeting will be held?
So through you, Mayor, we are just going to the market now for a consultant to start the process for us, and when the budget is passed, we will then finalise that. And so the expectation is that that work will be happening over the next 6 months, but definitely before Christmas.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else regarding the minute action list, councillors?
Yes, I've got one, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Arthur.
It's also in the information documents, the Tidanara headstones. There's been a bit of frustration about the actual notification by council of the people that have been affected. I keep sending a few names through to the CEO regarding people who haven't received notifications. One of them in particular, Stewie Brophy, is the first one to ever complain about that, and he still hadn't received, as of last week, a notification. Now, I offered to go ask for a list from the CEO to have a look, because I think it's going to be very embarrassing if we do get these headstones cleaned, and there's a heap miss out. So I believe we just got to attack it on a little bit different way to make sure all these people, and you've got to realise that some of these people no longer live in the town. You know, Pierre Strabula, for example, he's been down 3 or 4 times to clean his mum and dad's headstone up, which is now stained again. So we just need a little bit better way of getting this through to the owners of the headstones.
So through you, Mayor, we did change tack, as you suggest, Councillor Arthur, in that, as you said, there are people who no longer live in the district. So we have your list of people, but we have taken by exception rather than an inclusion, if you know it. We have signs up at the cemetery to say if people want to be removed from the process and don't want their headstones clean, we won't do it. But otherwise, we will clean all the headstones by implied authority. And I'll ask the director what date we're planning to do that.
Yeah, can I make the comment there? If people are not visiting the cemetery, they don't see those signs, and the people that no longer live here, a lot of them come down Father's Day, Mother's Day, that sort of thing. So if they don't live here, they can't see the sign, and when they do come down on that, then they'll see that theirs hasn't been cleaned.
No.
What I'm saying, we just need a little bit better way of relating to the people.
So you're right, some people won't see it, but we will clean the headstones unless somebody specifically tells us not to. So I can't imagine that there'll be too many people who may visit on rare occasions will be unhappy if we've cleaned their headstone. If somebody comes along and says, I didn't want it cleaned, then we will apologise for that. But generally, we didn't think we could reach enough people. We have the list of names, Councillor, who you've sent to us, but we were also acutely aware that many people don't visit the cemetery as regularly as others, and in fact, some not at all. But we couldn't, in all good faith, clean just the ones that we had been contacted. So we decided to have an opt-out situation, and that's what the piece of paper, the notice at the cemetery is, to actually say to people, if you don't want us to clean your headstone, please let us know, but otherwise we will be cleaning all of them that require some cleaning by the end of August, Matt?
Weather dependent.
Yep, weather dependent.
Weather depending by the end of
nobody will
August.
miss out on the headstone being cleaned. It'll only be if somebody comes along and says, we don't want you to do it, where we will then not do it.
Okay, I'll just make the comment, that list I did send was after the staff had requested me to get in touch with some people to get it done on a trial basis, because we were told, after everything had been organised, we were told by members of staff that we don't actually own the tombstones.
Right.
The other people did, so we had to get permission to clean them.
Yeah, but we just acknowledging that it was too difficult because, as I said, some people don't actually visit the cemetery at all. And we couldn't, in good faith, just clean the ones where we knew people were involved with visiting the graves. We really wanted to make sure that the cemetery looked pretty okay and that any headstone that needed cleaning was cleaned. I don't think there's any risk in that sense.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else from the minute action list, councillors? Okay, I'm taking there's no more. Move on to number 5.1, questions with notice. Councillor Arthur, your question with notice are in the agenda. Have you got any comment?
Yeah, I'm a little bit disappointed in the details given regarding the salary position. I'm asking for this as part of my review of the budget. The 2, 3 and 4, I'd like to know what the general consensus there was. We get the lump sum and that's all right, but I'd like to know how those lump sums are made up. And, like, for example, as we've got the $22,000 we spent on the street parade at Taylor and Bennett was in the budget. It was never mentioned. I've gone through 29 hours of tapes and it's never been mentioned at any of our meetings up until from February the 20th, 2020. So, I'd like to know where these things, and some of the, we've got $135,000 for arts. How does that thing, and that has actually rang a bell with quite a few people. They want to know, they do ring the meeting. So what are we spending $135,000 on arts? So, I think and I'll be pushing to get a little bit more information come budget time.
The councillor, in relation to the ones, so I think 3, 4 and 5, they're quite difficult, as you know, because the books haven't closed yet. But you'd be looking for more information in relation to particularly item 2 and particularly arts in terms of the breakup.
Could I make a comment, Mr. Mayor? We have actual figures and we have a budgeted figure for this year. Now, one, for example, which is the sports and recreation, 400 odd thousand, just off the top of my head, in depreciation figure. Well, I'd like to know how that's ascertained. And it's all right to say that, yes, we haven't got our figures up to date, but it's been every year in the budget, and this year we've got a figure again. So it's got to come from somewhere. It's not something you throw the numbers in the air and what it lands on the ground it comes up with. So there's got to be somewhere that it has been worked out before. Otherwise, how are we putting that number in the budget? And it's the same for all the 3.
So through you, Mayor, with the depreciation, it's based on our asset management plans, and as you are aware, they haven't been reviewed since 2017. So the depreciation in our budget, you'll find, has probably not changed too much in each of those 4 years because it is based on the historical. And once we do the upgrade to the asset management plan, we will then update the depreciation and also then the long-term financial plan. So you're right, councillor, there has been very little change or work done since the last asset management plans were done in 2017, I think, from memory. So once that work is completed, and we are in the process of starting that now, that will be finished by Christmas of this year. We will then update the depreciation based on that. I know you have a concern that we may have some non-council assets that may be sitting on council land, but we put in the total value of our assets to show you that even if there was one building that is in there incorrectly, and we'll pick that up when we do the review, it won't have a material impact on the overall asset and depreciation base.
Councillor Qualman is next. This is a question in relation to Councillor Arthur's question, Councillor Qualman.
Yes, it is, Mr. Mayor. Regarding, I've got a hard copy here of the, is this a different format regarding the register of salaries? Because on the previous register of salaries back in February, for instance, the CEO's wage was 188 and now it shows 173. And the difference is shown on the other side where it says other allowances and benefits, which is good in one sense. It explains more to the community the breakup of the actual wages. Is this how the register of salaries will look like from now on?
This is the public document that's available to anybody who wants to ask, councillor. And this is how it's shown, and there's a statutory template for how this is shown. So, and you're right, my salary has 173 is the base salary, and then it's got allowances in it, which is the motor vehicle allowance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Roundtree.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just having a look at that salaries register, I ended up putting it into an Excel spreadsheet so I could look at it a bit better. What I noticed was in the report given, there were about 4 mistakes in the FTE column. So under corporate support officer, where it's got FTE 2, an FTE can't be more than 1. So that should have just probably been 1, and number of employees 2. It happened again on community facilities employees, roads municipal employees, and patrol grader. And I only found that because I had put this into Excel, and it really changed the numbers, having the FTEs at those numbers. When I looked at the total position and I used the upper salary as opposed to the lower salary, and then added on the 25% leave loading and the total cost, it gave a much higher figure than what we're reporting in our budget for total salaries. So I'm just wondering how, I mean, these are costs to council. Should we not be reporting on what the benefits cost, what the leave loading cost to council is, plus the salaries? Because at the end of the day, that's what's either committed or will physically be paid out in one financial year.
So through you, Mayor, that information that we sent in a spreadsheet, I can send to you again, but that is not a public document. The way that the salaries are shown for council is in this template, and that's what I've given you because we're in a public arena. The spreadsheet that was shared with you maybe mid last year from memory shows you the overheads and all of that, which you're talking about, Councillor Roundtree. We can share that again with you, but it is not that's a working document point in time. This document is the one that is for the template that is in the legislative requirements from a public perspective.
And through you, Matt, the template you're using has got 4 errors in it.
The FTE is, you can read it that way, but the FTE, we have 4 FTE in that particular category. Number of employees is 6. That won't always equal that. Sometimes we'll have FTE that is 2.1 or 1.4, but maybe 5 employees, because one of the number of employees in the vernacular is bums on seats, actual people. And the FTE is the actual total of the working hours. So you may have, say we may have 3 staff at 0.6 each, which is 1.8 FTE, but it might be actually 3 people. So there'll be times where the FTE number and the number of employees don't match.
Well, no, they do match in this regard. It's just that all the others have a full-time equivalent and then how many number of employees. So if you've got a full-time equivalent person, the most they can work is 1. And then you have the number of employees times by that. But I see what you're saying. You're saying one might work 1, one might work 0.5, one might work 0.6. And that's going to be difficult to reflect in this. I just thought that the FTE number, when applied to a spreadsheet, did come up with some really odd numbers.
So, for you, Mayor, just for example, then the corporate support officer, which you mentioned, there are 2 people and they're 2 full-time FTEs, which means we have 2 FTEs and we have 2 full-time employees. But if you look at, say, the finance officer payroll, it's 0.4 of an FTE and we've only got 1 person. So there is FTEs means the total hours or resources we're paying for, but it could be more number of people because of the part-time element.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and I take on board your explanation of how it looks. If we move on from that, then I think we need to add in the leave loading and allowances to get a better representation of what staffing costs the organisation.
So that's what the budget will show, but I can send that around in separate. But as a ballpark figure, if you're looking at it, it's generally about 25% on top of that.
Right, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to move things along. Anything else around that question? I Trust we're nearly done. We are. I move to questions without notice, councillors. Councillor, I'm going to start with Councillor Qualman and then Councillor Yench.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. It's very nice to see our new toilets up and running at Tarnham Bend, but I've heard a few complaints about some of our citizens regarding, is there a reason why the stainless steel pans don't have any seats?
The director's just.
Director's just been interrupted in the meeting, councillor. We're just conferring about, so the question is why we have no actual seats on the stainless steel plans, which are relatively moulded, councillors. They don't have a particularly sharp edge, do they?
And it's fairly, the director can answer me, but I'm pretty certain that most public toilets don't have, I've been in many, many public toilets and they don't have a seat.
Seats will be applied.
Pardon?
Seats going in.
Oh, Councillor Qualman, seats are going in.
Councillor,
Beautiful.
Your lucky day, you've got your wish. You'll get a seat.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I done your trick the other day, and while I was getting round in the community, I checked out the toilets and they all had seats. So I thought, yes, good. I'm glad that's going to happen. Thank you.
So that's the only question without notice you have.
Yes, thank you.
Right, Councillor Yench is next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, thank you to the CEO for having a look at the roadway down to Fred's Landing and rectifying the loose signage. That has been done, am I correct?
Correct.
Thank you very much. That's it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
That's it. Who else with questions without notice, councillors? Councillor
Yes.
Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question without notice regarding the timescales for the preparation of the report, which the Mayor requested as a result of the Sporting Hub's deputation.
That's for you, Mayor.
Yep.
So in my response to one of the questions on notice, I put some information there. We met with the Tarnham Bend netball courts representative and the bowling club and the football the week after the last meeting. We worked through what they needed to do before we could write a report to council, and they have still some work to do in terms of the establishment of the hub. Although they have a hub and it's incorporated, there's no active lease with the hub yet. It's still with the football fields and the football club, sorry, and that's in holdover at the moment because we were waiting, and we had this conversation with the hub representatives probably 12 months ago when we came to council about the community land and extending it for the very purpose of ensuring that, excuse me, the hub had sufficient land. They haven't yet come together as a hub and come back to council to say they want a lease yet, and they're still sorting through those details, excuse me. So until the group as a whole, the hub, excuse me, I need to
Have another drink.
Sorry. Until they do that work and come together as a hub and have a lease from council, I can write a report on their deputation, but there are still gaps in what they need to do before they are grant ready in a sense, which my understanding was the purpose of the deputation was to come to council to say what we can help with, and also to ensure they were ready for a Building Better Regions grant, which we expect will be open towards January, February of next year. But there is still some work to do from their end. And if we didn't have a lockdown, Deb was going, Director of Community and Client Services was going there tomorrow night to help them work through the process. So we need to help them get to a point where they are grant ready. And I can write a report to that effect, but I have put that in the answers to another question or motion that's already in the council meeting.
So through you, Mayor, I have a motion for this. Do you want it with motions without notice?
I think if we could reflect on when we get to the councillors' notices of motion, perhaps we'll deal with that if it's in relation to this subject then.
It is.
In relation to the hub. There's a councillors indicated last meeting, and it's in this month's meeting, there's some notice of motion around that subject, I believe. Anyone else with questions without notice?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Arthur.
Just to the CEO, we discussed a couple of meetings ago about a reserve fund for the plant and equipment, and that was affirmative. That is still going to go ahead within the budget process for this year.
The reserve funds that will be established, I think the answer, councillor, was that under our current guidelines, that's not appropriate, but we will look at.
Well, can I ask a question? Why have about 14 councils I've checked on them all got reserve funds for their infrastructure, for their plant and equipment? And I just can't believe that we, or the staff seem to have a affiliation against, don't want to do this, because it's a twofold thing. It also checks that, you've got the money there, because necessarily you put a depreciation figure in, which is in theory your replacement costs over the period of time. Some years you might have to have more, some years you have to have less, but it also gives you the opportunity to make sure your depreciation you are using is correct. Well, when you trade things in, you might have it as a trade-in value of 60,000 and you get $100,000, or you might have it as 100,000, you get 60,000. So it's a double asset planning tool, and I haven't been able to find a council yet that hasn't got that.
So Councillor,
I find
I'm going to get the director of roads and infrastructure to give you a bit of a response. I know there's been work going on in this area.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks. Through the mayor, that will be addressed as part of the review of the plant and fleet asset management plan, which will be it was going to be part of a briefing next Tuesday night, the 27th, but that's obviously potentially going to be delayed. It's something that we can discuss at the assets and all the infrastructure and asset committee meeting. But the provision of depreciation with the plant and fleet, as you said, is very fluctuates depending on market. At the moment, the sale of plant and fleet is quite buoyant, but your question will be definitely addressed as part of the review of the asset management plan for plant and fleet, which is due to come to council in September.
Thank you.
Coming to council in September, councillor. Okay.
Yep.
Want to move the meeting along, councillors? Anything else in questions without notice? Okay, I move to item 6, Mayor's report. Councillors, any questions around the report there and the report submitted on behalf of Bridget and myself around our attendance at Canberra for the National Local Government Assembly? Councillor Qualman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just regarding your report, site tour with Director of Roads and Infrastructure of various locations across the district. What happened there? You had a bit of a tour around our roads that need attention or something, did you, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, I took the opportunity to take the director around that forgotten piece of council near where I live. So we have attended areas. We looked at a repair at Kai of a bus stop, which I think the director might agree with me wasn't a repair. That was one of the principal reasons. We actually had the opportunity to catch up with one of our patrol graders and our construction gang, and just at a look around that middle section, Kai, Sherlock, Cook Plains, Mallalong even. And the director did note one road was very rough twice. That's because I drove him over it twice.
Oh, very good. All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
In his car, I might add, councillor.
Oh.
I drove. Right, I've got a bit of a rotation of people on the screen here. Anyone else got a question around my report? Councillor Leng, I've got you with the canoe going with your back to me in your photo. Okay. Other elected members' reports. Councillor Arthur, anything want to add?
Can't remember what's in it.
No, there's nothing I've noted there I need to talk to you about. Councillor Hill, a very good report there around your attendance at the Murray-Darling Association at Wentworth, I understand. Do you wish to add anything?
No, I've included everything I need to put in.
No, it's very good. I note here that the New South Wales Minister, you weren't exactly in love with.
She didn't really make herself popular.
Thank you for that. Sorry, Councillor Yench, question.
Yes, and also thank you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hill through you, obviously, my compliments. The report is excellent. It also very clearly indicates that we still have significant problems with the views coming from the eastern states in regards water issues in this state. And I believe this council, through Councillor Hill, is on the ball. Thank you.
Very good. The only other councillor submitted a report is Councillor Foreman. You want to add anything, Councillor?
Nothing really as written there, Mr. Mayor, but also I would like to pass on my thanks to a very well written, comprehensive report by Councillor Hill. Thank you.
Yeah, no, very interesting. Okay, councillors, we're up to item 7 on the agenda. This councillor's got 3, Councillor Inch has got 3 notices of motion. Number 1, and Councillor, you still, given that the Chief Executive's comments, do you still wish to move that?
I still wish to move that one, the number, the 7.11, please. But if there's a seconder, it would be useful.
You're still moving?
Yes.
The number 1, and just give me. Oh, I've lost a councillor off the screen. I'm just trying to bring the person back. We're just trying to bring the person back.
I second the motion.
Councillor Lang, I'm taking you as the seconder. Councillor Jens, you wish to speak to 711, please?
I do, and I thank the CEO for the very comprehensive report. I wish with this motion, I'm going to ask for it to lay on the table for further clarification. As of today, I have been made aware that a councillor has been spruiking that there will be no money coming back to the tennis club under any circumstances or to the hub. And because the cost of changing the land use for that piece of ground was $350,000, and there are other various costs associated with it. I have had this conversation with 2 different people.
Councillor, you wish to name this councillor. You can't probably make this.
I do not need to.
Well, then you need to withdraw an aspersion that a councillor has been spruiking something.
Well, then I will, councillor, and it's Councillor Taylor. Yeah, I find this very disturbing, Mr. Mayor, because none of this has been voted on. It has not gone through council, and therefore I believe it has put out misinformation in the community, which is of detriment to this council. And
given you've made a personal slant at another councillor, I'm probably going to give that councillor the opportunity at this stage.
That's all right.
To discuss that before I go any further.
Thank you.
You wish to, Councillor Taylor?
Through you, Mayor, I'm not quite sure what Councillor Yanch is accusing me of. However, I have never said that any cash would not be forthcoming for, I'm not sure what, for the tennis club, I'm just not sure where this is coming. Given that Councillor Yanch does not turn up to the meetings I assume he's referring to the sporting hub meetings at which Councillor Qualman and myself have been regular attendees. I will dispute Councillor Yanch, and I will ask him to withdraw it unless he has some evidence, which I assume is word of mouth.
So, Councillor, you wish to withdraw or not?
Well, I can, Mr. Mayor. It is word of mouth.
Well,
and
you can or you are?
I will. But, Mr. Mayor, the clarification of my membership on the hub is that I have resigned when their new constitution came into place, because it called for 2 members from each organisation, and I would have assumed that the councillor would have been aware of that. So I will withdraw my accusation, Mr. Mayor, but I would like some clarification.
Okay, I move on. I move on to, do you wish this motion to be adjourned? Because I'm now checking whether the person who moves the motion can also adjourn the motion. I'm looking at my soon-to-depart governance officer around this.
For you, Mr. Mayor, adjourning it would be a formal motion
That's
generally
right.
by someone else that hasn't spoken.
So it cannot be the mover or the seconder can
No.
adjourn the motion.
No, he's spoken to it.
So he's spoken to it. So does anyone else wish to adjourn the motion?
Mr. Mayor, could you just tell me what the motion is, seeing I haven't got the thing? I know
This is Councillor Jentsch moves that the council formally approaches the Tail and Bend Tennis Club to determine the future tenure of the existing facility with a view to their permanent relocation to the Tail and Bend District Combined.
Don't need to go any further. Yep.
You've got the right one, councillor.
Put the motion.
Councillor Jentsch, have you deemed to have spoke to the motion originally?
Yes, I have, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Do you, Councillor Lang, as a seconder, do you wish to speak?
Not at this stage, thank
At
you.
this stage. Is there anyone else wishes to debate this motion? Councillor Taylor and then Councillor Roundtree.
Through you, Mayor. Councillor Coleman and myself have attended regularly along with my husband. And we've spoken at length to the tennis club, and we've spoken at length to the netball club. And we have listened to their comments regarding relocation. At the last meeting, they had not fully relocated, but I believe that, as per the CEO's comments, they have now relocated. I've also spoken around the memorial, and it was recognised that the family members needed to be contacted. I believe that is in progress. And also that when it comes to the sale of the site, I believe there was some original misinformation anyway that was being spread in the community regarding the sale of the site. Obviously, the intent of the development, the changes to the development plan were in rezoning it to residential. The intent was to sell the land because and that's why it's now zoned residential. So I've had to field some comments from the community regarding that. I've also had to field some comments from the community regarding the fact that the land was donated, which the CEO cleared up at the previous meeting. So there's a considerable amount of misinformation being pushed around, which hopefully some of the commentary from the CEO will have cleared up. And when it comes to the sale of the land, I think the process needs to continue, which is to develop the growth strategy, which is what was mentioned by the CEO at one of the meetings that I had with her, which was to not jump the gun, not to bypass the actual staff who are putting in the growth strategy by putting in a presumptive motion which forces effectively council to put it on the market. If the growth strategy states that the best option is to put the what was the tennis club land on the market, then so be it. But the growth strategy itself may suggest something else. It may suggest, for example, leasing the land. Now, having had considerable conversations, which I would expect that Councillor Qualman will agree, back me up with, the conversations include how to get in place some funding so that the combined sporting club can go for a Building Better Regions funding grant. So that it was hinted by Mr. Tony Passon when he attended the hub last that the next round may be the last round. He was absolutely supportive of grant funding for the sporting hub, but said that it may be the last round. We know how long it would take to sell property and land, and whilst we might want to wait for the sale of this land in order to put the money towards the combined sporting hub, it restricts what can be done with the site, and it restricts potentially what can be done with the funds. Because if the funds can be raised beforehand in order to meet the requirements for the BBRF funding, then the money from the sale, for example, could go towards something else. Plus, it requires some community consultation, and that will come, I hope, from the growth strategy. So whilst I in principle agree to one or two bits of this, I do not agree to having a motion which is so prescriptive and which then ties the staff and council in such a way. Therefore, I won't be supporting this motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Roundtree.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Taylor has summed up pretty much what I was going to say anyway. I also was looking for clarification of which motion we were on. Understood that it's 7.1.2.
Councillor, the first one.
Yeah, and I agree with what Councillor Taylor said, and I'll be voting the same way.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Arthur's hand up, and Councillor Qualman, I think you're just pushing back your mane of hair at this stage, but are you indicating on to speak? Yes. Take Councillor Arthur first.
Yeah, just quickly, I'd like to, I won't be voting in favour of the motion, but this is council land and it's not tennis club land. It may have been donated, but there's a lot of land's been donated to council over the period of times. So if and when everything's decided on what's going to happen there, it's up to the council at the time to decide what happens to the money. So, but in the interim, I will not be voting for this.
Councillor Qualman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I concur with what the previous councillors have just said, Councillor Taylor and Councillor Roundtree. And it's important that we get this right, and it's important that we don't be too premature, and that we work with the strategic growth plan. And also, whilst we're at it and getting the information out there to the people, because I've had concerns from the community of conflicting reports and concerns. So let's get it right. And I'm glad to see you in the report about the CEO's handing on the Clapp family. We've got that part right. But at the moment, I think it's too premature, and I won't be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillors? Okay, Councillor Jentz, you'll close.
Consider it closed, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. This is item 711 around the Tailem Bend Tennis Club site. Yeah, I put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? The motion is lost. It is lost with councillors Jentz and Leng voting for it, and against with councillors Simmons, Hill, Qualman, Roundtree, Taylor. I have missed someone, sorry.
Me.
Arthur, thank you. Have I got 8 councillors, Ashley? I think I have in total. So the motion is lost. I move to item 7.1.2, Councillor Jentz, Tailem Bend Tennis Club Community Group Loan. Councillors, I'll just read this for your benefit. The council fund wrong page, Paul. That the $50,000 community group loan to the Tailem Bend Netball Club be changed to a one-off grant. Councillors, this motion, and I'll be asking you, Councillor, whether you want to continue moving it. This motion would need to requires the previous motion establishing this loan to be revoked, which must be a notice, as you know, as a previous presiding member, would be a notice of motion again. So do you wish to proceed with this at this stage?
I do not at this stage, thank you.
So you're withdrawing that motion?
Correct.
Thank you. And
Mr. Mayor, could I just ask the Councillor Jentz the reason he's put this motion up?
well, you can, but I wouldn't require him to answer it because it's not really needed.
Okay.
I'm happy to do so, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
The community, this particular community group has struggled exceptionally hard through an absolutely hideous time. They are pulling themselves together. They have done exceptionally well. and things are moving in the right direction, but they are also building an asset on council land that council owns. So in essence, to some extent, we are loaning someone else to build money to someone else to build an asset for us. It is a one-off scenario. We don't have other sporting organisations or groups that have suffered the same fate that these people have, and not through any fault of their own. They are victims, but I do believe it would assist, and we have been exceptionally generous to other community groups, and we have. So,
Councillor, there's two things. Your position that council owns the site will be interesting, and it'll be interesting to Councillor Arthur in terms of depreciation in the future. But the second thing is, I understand that the financial position the club was put in is soon to be resolved. We understand that there's good news on the horizon there. It's not for us to announce that, though. Anyway, you withdrew the motion, so that's fine. I move you on to 7.1.3, your third motion, that the council fund the shortfall of up to $40,000 to facilitate a project manager to be used for the Taylor Menon District Combined Sporting and Recreation Hub project. Still moving that way?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
You wish to speak to it now? You wish to wait for a second? I'll
speak to it now, thank you.
Certainly.
That the scenario is that we are able to use this individual for other council projects, I would have presumed, not just a one project officer. The Sporting Hub have a significant funding windfall. I believe we were told that at their presentation at the previous meeting, that most of half the wage or whatever would be met. They may have already obtained more since then, and I'm hoping that it could only end up being as little as $10,000. But I am not proposing by any means that we spend 80, which is what one of these individuals would be worth. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, is there a seconder? I'll look for a seconder first, and Councillor Ling is the seconder. Councillor Ling, do you want to speak? You have to unmute.
No.
Thanks. Anyone else speaking for or against the motion? Councillor, I start with Councillor Rountree.
Having some technical difficulties here at the moment. My computer keeps throwing me out, so I missed a lot of the debate in the previous motion when after Councillor Arthur asked his question. I never really got to hear much of the answer.
Okay, can you hear us now?
I can, but I just had a question. I know this is going backwards, and I'm
well, not going backwards. I'm in 713 in relation to the last of the councillors' 3 notices of motion.
So I can't ask a question about the previous motion?
Well, I don't think it's relevant, councillor.
Well, I sort of think it is. Sorry,
Mayor. Try me very quickly then. Quick.
Okay, my reasoning is that it was a long motion. It was brought up at the previous meeting, brought up again, and put into the agenda, and then withdrawn. I don't understand that process, and what was it for? If you're going to put it up and then withdraw it, I don't understand that.
I would say that the councillor is entitled to not move the motion they put in the agenda. That may have also been that the Chief Executive Officer had an opportunity to put some more information around it. But it's been withdrawn, so it's been dealt with, councillor. I've moved on, sorry. So do you wish to speak at all?
So, yeah, I don't support the motion 7.1.3 in its current formats until the factors that are identified by the CEO are addressed. After that time, then I would support allocating funding for a project manager for the Sporting and Recreation Hub, as I think the hub itself is going to be a fabulous facility, but not before the CEO has finished the work she needs to do in order to get that motion fully flushed out.
Okay, any other councillors on the motion? I have 713. Councillor Arthur.
Yes, I'll be voting against this, Mr. Mayor. It sets a precedent. We've had a presentation and a plan done up by the Meningie Football Club some time ago. They paid the $40,000 themselves. The Tindanara Hub have just done the same thing. They paid, theirs was only $38,000, but they paid it themselves. I see no reason why we should be supplying money to Tail and Bend hub, because all these sporting bodies have really had to employ professionals or semi-professionals to get the grants up to a standard which are acceptable to the Office of Rec and Sport, Pekin District's basketball club and all the same. So, I can't see why we should be now putting in for the dollars for this. And besides that, it's a long way from starting a project, so why are we going to allocate 40,000 of council's money to a project that may be, 2 or 3 years away?
Okay, anyone else speaking for or against the motion? There is none. 713, council fund the shortfall of up to $40,000 facilitate a project manager to be used for the Tail and Bend District Combined Sporting and Recreation Hub project. I'm going to put that to the vote. Those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And me, sorry. So that motion is lost with councillors Yench and Leng for the motion, and against being councillors Simmons, Hill, Taylor, Rountree, Arthur, Bowman. How am I going? Got them all? So it was lost. Councillor Taylor, in relation to this subject, I would trust.
A motion without notice.
You have a motion without notice in relation to the subject we've just been debating. Okay.
I'll say that again. I have a motion without notice, and it is on this subject. The motion is that council seek grant funding to resource a suitably qualified individual to assist communities in the district to refine the terms of reference and scope projects which would not normally fall within council's normal scope of works, for example, the combined sporting hub.
Just letting Ashley write that down. I don't know that many councillors can see that on the screen.
No.
I can see Councillor Hill's hand up. I don't know quite what you're doing.
I was going to second it, that's all.
You're just seconding that. Right. So Councillor Taylor's moved. How are we going, Ashley? Nearly done. I'm going to reread that with Councillor Hill as the seconder. Right. Moved Councillor Taylor and seconded Councillor Hill that council seek grant funding to resource a suitably qualified individual to assist communities in the district to refine the terms of reference and better refine projects which would not usually fall within council's normal scope of works, for example, the Tail and Bend District Community Sporting and Recreation Hub. Councillor, someone wish to, you want to speak to it, Councillor, sorry?
Yes, I will. The Councillor Yanch is on the right trail, but it's far too prescriptive for his motion. And there's more than just Tail and Bend who would require assistance when it comes to preparing materials, projects, etc., for when going after grant funding. Now, if we can get someone, I haven't been prescriptive, so I haven't said short or long term or whatever. So it's quite, the wording is quite loose, so that if we can get someone for 6 months, for example, who can firm up grant applications or firm up the terms of reference for the whole project, it would help more than just one community. So it could help, for example, pursuing grant funding for Wadmore House and any other projects out there in the community where people simply just don't know where to start. So if we've got, we may be able to piggyback on the funding which Ms Shepherd alluded to at the deputation, which was some funding for a project officer, project manager from the RDA. That may fall into this category, or it may be something completely separate. It's just that I don't want to be as prescriptive and to narrow it down to just one organisation when there are so many organisations and community groups, sporting groups and others out there who could benefit from the expertise of someone who is not necessarily a staff member of council to put together their project scope, their project documentation, and to move them forward when it goes to applying for grants.
Councillor Hill, you wish to speak?
I was just going to reinforce what Councillor Taylor has said. It's I think it's important that if we're going to have a project officer, it is available for anyone across the district to utilise and not just one group. So I fully support what Councillor Taylor's put forward.
Thank you. Any other councillors for or against? Councillor Arthur.
Yeah, I'd just like to ask a question. We already have a grants officer at the present moment who has been very, very good at informing the general public about grants that are available, although not a full-time position. But, you know, like to employ somebody here where you don't know what they're actually going to be doing, except the Tail and Bend hub is pointless. All these other people who've got grants have had to work very hard and do the work themselves. You know, Peak, for example, they put in for 3 years to the Office of Rec and Sport and been very unsuccessful with their netball courts, but they still did it. Tindanara put in for 4 years and were lucky to get it. But, you know, like all we're doing is saying, well, the volunteers can't do the job, we're going to do it. And where do you draw the line? What is it for? The CWA wants a new building, Teddy the Action Club wants something. Are we going to employ somebody to do these specific projects? Or after they get the grant, are we employing someone to make sure the building's done? You know, there's two different sorts of things there. And our project officer, for example, that we have employed now is actually for seeing the project is built properly. Is that not right, the CEO? He is not there to hunt projects.
So I will ask the CEO to address this.
So correct, Councillor, through you, Mayor, correct, Councillor Arthur, the project officer we have in place is really for capital builds and for the amount of projects that we've got going on over the previous 12 months and the next 12 months. We do have one staff member who does do grants. It's not her main job, if you like. She's also the LAP officer and works in that space in the community a fair bit. So in a sense, she balances both of those jobs. I think what I'm hearing from the motion is that this is someone who works specifically with the clubs across the district, which we don't have the capacity for. We do it, but we certainly don't work to the degree that this motion is suggesting. And I suppose the thing with the sports clubs are that every year their executive move around a little bit because your kids stop playing a sport or new kids come in, and so the executive changes. So that level of expertise is not always there on an ongoing basis. So most sports clubs, in my experience, do benefit from this type of activity. We are looking, and is there an opportunity with the funding that's available now through the bushfires, which is basically built around the resilience factor for communities? Very rarely do grants have the capacity for employing somebody. They generally are to build things or to do things in the community. But we think that there may be an opportunity to test whether, if this motion is accepted in chamber, that there may be capacity in that particular grant, which is timely.
Councillor Roundtree's next.
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing. Can anyone hear me?
Yep. We can hear you. I can hear you very well. And I've got lots of nodding people. Can you hear me, councillor?
very scratchy.
Do you wish
You're
to
asking
speak?
if I can hear you.
Do you wish to speak?
I don't think I can be heard, so I can't hear myself. So no, I'll hold off for the moment. Sorry.
You understand where we're at in the agenda?
7, can you just remind me where we are?
It's a motion without notice. I'll just read it
Oh.
again so at least you know if we drop out. Move
Thank you.
Councillor Taylor, seconded Councillor Hill, that council seek grant funding to resource a suitably qualified individual to assist communities in the district to refine the terms of reference and better refine projects that would not usually fall within council's normal scope of works, for example, the Tail and Bend Sporting Hub. That's the motion that's there.
Thank you. My comment to that, if you can still hear me, would be, I did hear a bit of what Councillor Arthur said, and whilst our other groups have had to struggle through and do a lot of this work themselves, I think they would actually have liked to have had the same opportunity. And just because we've toughed it out in the past without this sort of assistance doesn't mean we need to progress that way in the future. And we are looking at trying to get grant funding, so it's not going to directly affect our bottom line as much as if we can get the grant funding to do it, then that would be really useful. So I will be supporting this motion.
Okay, Councillor Yench is next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I concur with Councillor Roundtree, and I appreciate Councillor Taylor's motion. I think it is a step in the right direction. We are moving forward, and I think it's positive for the community.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to the for or against this motion? All right, Councillor Taylor, you'll close.
Closed.
Councillor Taylor's closed the thing, so councillors, you're aware, and perhaps I'll read it for the third time. The Councillor Taylor moved Councillor Hill that council seek grant funding to resource a suitably qualified individual to assist communities in the district to refine the terms of reference and better refine projects which would not usually fall within council's normal scope of works. And for example, that would be the Tail and Bend Sporting Hub. Okay, councillors, I'm going to put this to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? So, councillors, I declare that carried 7 votes to 1, with Councillor Arthur being the councillor voting against that. But all the other councillors, I don't need to name them again, I trust, voting for it. Thank you. That's carried. I'm into motions without notice, councillors. You'd be aware, councillors, that at 6 o'clock we'd be better if we weren't in the building.
So you may, I think you've got dispensation if you're driving home after 6
We are allowed to drive home, but anyway, I'll just say that. Is there anyone with motions without notice? There being none, I move on. Number 8 is the Office of the Chief Executive Officer. Number 1 is the Canalpin Soldiers Memorial Swimming Pool naming proposal. Councillors, there is a recommendation there. Is anyone? Councillor Roundtree?
I'd like to move the recommendation, please.
Councillor Qualman, are you seconding? Yes, I'll take that as a yes. Councillor Roundtree, you wish to speak to it?
Just want to say thank you to the staff for putting that survey out. I think where we've arrived is a really good name. It's inclusive and I'm happy. So, yep, I think it's a great outcome, and I'm grateful that we did the survey and just got people's thoughts on board.
So, councillor, you're aware this just slightly does change the name?
Yeah, it just adds district in, I think, doesn't it? It's just adding the words and district.
Yeah, that's correct.
That's great.
It
Yeah.
changes to Canalpin and Districts Soldiers Memorial Swimming Pool. That's the slight
I
change.
think that's great.
Okay, councillors, anyone else? Councillor Taylor first.
Through you, Mayor, I think it's certainly more inclusive, and hopefully we can also see the Meningian District Skate Park. That would be the start. That would set up a good trend.
Thank you. Any other councillor for or against this motion? Councillor Lang.
Just a question, perhaps, to the director or the CEO. It's minor, really, just to add district. I'm just wondering what expense it would be at to the council was replacing the plaque and paperwork and everything else associated with this change.
Through you, Mayor, I'm guessing here this is a ballpark figure, but I would say probably a couple of $100. most of our, I think from memory, there's one plaque down there that we may have to change. And it may be even from a legacy point of view that we leave the old one and the original one and put a new one up there as well to recognise the changes. But it'll only be a couple of $100. The director's nodding at me to say that.
And that would probably be an opportunity when we probably reopen the pool, councillor, once we get the pool building refurbished. About around $200 would be the best estimate, councillor. Now the councillors for or against? Okay, councillor Roundtree will close. Hello, councillor Roundtree, are you closing?
I'm closing, sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. You've got the scratchiest IT today. I'll accept that.
Yeah.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? It's carried unanimously. Number 2 is change of council meeting date. So this is in relation to the June 2022 council date. Councillor Coleman, you're moving? Thank you. Councillor Taylor is the seconder. Any discussion? There being none, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. 9.1, council members training and professional development policy review. The recommendation there, councillors. Councillor Roundtree, you moving that way?
I have some questions and comments first.
Well, I'm probably going to get a mover and a seconder if I may. I'm going to take Councillor Hill. You prepared to move? Thank you. That's the thumbs up. That's what I like. Is there a seconder before we got some questions? I'll look for a seconder. Councillor Taylor, you're the seconder. Councillor Hill, you want to speak to it at all?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much. Seconder, wish to speak to it at all? No. So Councillor Roundtree, your questions are?
I think the policy needs to determine an amount of money that it will spend per elected member, and that once that money has been spent, then something else needs to occur, like we amend the budget or do something. I think the policy as it stands, sort of, you run the risk of one elected member perhaps doing a whole heap of training and using all the money up, and then we're forced into having to go back and do a budget consideration. That it would be nice if we all knew that we had $1,000 each per year to spend on training, and that way we would pick the courses that we felt best suited us rather than just doing courses for courses' sake. In the plan, down further in that document, there's a number of dates that are to be advised, and I think that until those dates are sort of locked in, for instance, building effective relationships for elective members, dispute resolution, effective decision-making and emotional intelligence, these sorts of courses are ones that should be undertaken straight after an election when you've got maybe new people coming on board, and getting that sorted out straight away rather than doing it in year 3 or year 4. They're the sorts of things. So I would like to see dates locked in for some of those training days, and I would also like to see written into the policy that an amount per elected member is allocated that for their training purposes throughout their term on council, rather than just one number which can easily blow out. I hope that, Matt, you heard that, because I feel very scrappy.
Couple answers I'm going to give you, councillor. To be advised are, because generally those courses, they won't set a date till they've got an indication of the number of people that will attend. And in the current environment, that would be fairly challenging, I think. The second thing I'd say to your discussion around limiting any one elected member is, some elected members may feel they need more training than others. You may, and we haven't had it for a while, we haven't had a new elected member join us, only a year or two into the term of council. So I take on board what you're saying. I think it would be a limit. I think nowadays, given the amount, and in the new Act, and soon to be departing director is going to be fully across the new Act, she assures me, around elected member training, the new elected member training in the new Act is far stronger again. You thought it was fairly hard work when you first joined council. You'll have to go through it every 4 years in a more solid form. So I take on board you're open to moving an amendment, councillor, but I take your points.
Well, thank you, Mayor.
I just hold you up, please. I'll just get the director, Deb, to speak to you.
Sure. Through you, Mr. Mayor, just to explain, this policy comes to council every year. So the development plan is pertinent for that year, not for the term of council. It's reviewed every year, just for your information.
Sorry, councillor.
In response to this is the first time I've seen the policy. I don't believe I've seen it in the years that I've been here.
Deb,
So-
you want to answer that one?
Yeah, sure. Yes, I put this up to council July last year. This went to
Sorry, I'll
council.
take that back then.
And I'm sorry, I can't tell you when it was prior to that, but I know I put it up last year.
Are these your answers, councillors?
Sorry,
other
the other question I have then, Mayor, is why can't we build into this some sort of, taking on board, we're going to have to do more training. Why can't we build in an amount per councillor? What is the harm in doing
Well,
that?
you can, but the council, you can move an amendment that if you wish.
I would like to move an amendment then, please,
So the amendment will be,
that the council adopt the council members' training and professional development policy with an amendment to include an amount of money per elected member per year.
I think you need to specify that here, councillor.
So through you, Mayor.
For the
budget-
2021-22 financial year.
The money is set in the budget process. Councillor Roundtree, are you asking that one step further in that say the budget is $10,000, that is made up of $1,000 per person? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes. And I mean, that doesn't mean to say that if somebody needs extra training because they don't believe they have the skills to do the job properly, and they say, look, I've already used my $1,000, but I need more. That's not to say that we won't or shouldn't grant the extra money to go towards them and to maybe take it out of someone else's budget. But I worry, and what I'm seeing is that some councillors want to go to all sorts of training, and I don't know whether it's really something that needs to happen. And it takes out of the budget for training that other councillors might need later. And we don't know what's coming up that we might like to do next year, but there might not be any money for it.
No, I'm sorry. I'm just waiting. When you say with an amount of money, I need that to be more prescriptive, to be, I think, an amendment. And I'm looking at
For the amendment, then I will say that the allocated budgeted amount per annum be divided by the number of elected members per year. So whatever we've agreed to in the budget, we allocate it to the person
equally or
equally.
yeah. I'm going to now seek if there is a seconder for the amendment. I'm not there. Just hang on, Councillor Lang. I think you're not a seconder with that.
No,
just hold the horses, please.
it's a point of order,
I'm gonna
actually.
ask Deb her view on something here. The other side of the room in this meeting.
Yes, sorry. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So if the mover and seconder are happy, this could be a variation in the first instance, as opposed to an amendment in the first instance.
In the first instance, but it can still be an amendment.
It could be.
I'm
if the
happy with
mover and
that.
seconder don't.
Well, it's not your motion, so. Sorry.
Order.
I'm going to Councillor Lang next, because I'm sorry, Councillor, I cut you a little bit short.
Sorry, I believe the proposed amendment is against the original intent of the motion, and therefore it cannot be an amendment to the motion.
My advice is against your position, councillor, but be that as it may, I've got Councillor Hill next, and Councillor Hill was the original mover of the motion, so I'm seeking to see if she wants to speak or whether she wants to vary her motion.
I was just going to ask a question through you
Even better.
to Councillor Roundtree. Would it be better to have a cap rather than a allocated amount per councillor? Because some councillors may not need their allocated amount, whereas another person who may be brand new or whatever. So maybe we could put a cap rather than a prescribed amount. Would that be acceptable?
through you, Mayor. That's sort of what we've got now, and that we've got a budgeted amount we can spend. So we've technically got ourselves a cap for the group of us to undertake training. What I was trying to do was separate it out more, and so that we could have a fairer amount allocated to us and not have it all used by a couple of people.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, what I meant was a cap per councillor. So let's say you might have a cap of, let's say, $2,000 before they have to come back and justify why they need more training and spend more money.
Yeah, I take what you're saying, councillor. I think so something along the lines of up to perhaps 25% of the training budget might be where the words you're looking for, not a dollar figure, but a percentage of the training budget for the elected members.
Yeah, a cap per elected member before needing to come back for approval.
So would you be prepared to vary your original motion around that?
Yes, yes, I would.
So,
sorry, through you, Mayor, the document, the policy itself says that the person wanting to go for training needs to justify why they need to go, doesn't it?
well, that'll stand separately. Sorry, I'm just going to go to the seconder. Are you happy with the mover of this original motion's heading?
My concern, Mayor, is that there's nothing in here which gives us an indication of need. So in a business, for example, you have a training needs analysis. So because just putting a figure in there, it's kind of human, it's temptation to just find something which is up to $1,000 and go and put in for training for it. So my concern with this is that the councillors at this stage surely need to be requesting training for a specific purpose, for a specific outcome, which is of benefit to the ratepayers. And there isn't sort of anything that I can see in here which addresses that. It's all well and good saying there's a financial amount per year, but I'm worried that people will just say, well, I've got X in the kitty and therefore I want to spend it. So it's got to be more about the need for the training, which you would think would be heavier at the beginning of a term and next to non-existence at the end. So in year 4, for example, surely to goodness, people wouldn't be needing any training unless there was a legislative requirement, and that would be a budget variation at the time. That's my concern.
Okay, so
Mr. Mayor, mate.
No, just hang on. I'm first and foremost seeing if the mover of the motion, which is Councillor Hill, wishes to vary her motion, and it appears if she did, the seconder wouldn't be in favour. So then I move to an amendment which I have at the moment from Councillor Rountree, which doesn't address what Councillor Hill may have said. Councillor Rountree's amendment has not got a seconder. I'm going to give Councillor Rountree an opportunity to put as an amendment something along the lines of what Councillor Hill was saying, or I would just wait for a seconder.
Through you, Mayor, with the amendment, I think what Councillor Hill and I are trying to achieve is is the same thing. We're just going about it different ways. I just want some clarification. We already have a budget set of, say, $10,000 for training.
Yep.
How does the changes to that recommendation address the fact that 1 or 2 councillors can use the majority of the money for training when it might deplete that $10,000 and not leave any for the rest of us? And if we do want to do something, we then have to amend the budget to increase the amount of money required to cover the training costs. What I'm trying to do is let's not go over that $10,000, but let's make it fair that everyone's got the same opportunity. And if we don't use it one year, maybe it rolls into the budget for the following year for discretionary training for something. But I also take on board Councillor Taylor's point of view that you need to identify the areas where people are lacking in training to then fill that gap. I worry about the costs of these things getting out of control. Like Councillor Taylor's done a heap of training. I'm sure Councillor Hill's done lots of training in different things, as have I, that we might not need it all, but we should have a list of what people know how to do already and where their deficiencies lie, and address that. I think we just can't keep throwing money at this type of event.
Well, in this area, councillor, it's up to the person to identify their own deficiencies or strengths. I see you, councillor Arthur. I'm hoping you're not calling for medical assistance. Just wait. Just wait. No, just wait. Councillor Roundtree, I really do need a seconder for her amendment, otherwise it's going to lapse. Is there a seconder? And I'll read it. The council adopt the members' training and professional development policy with the allocated budget per annum be divided per number of council members. Is there anyone wishing to second that motion? Right, that amendment has lapsed, councillors. I can take it. Councillor Roundtree, I'm sorry, I'm going to shut you off for a second. I've got Councillor Arthur. No, Councillor Arthur is the next speaker.
Mr. Mayor, can I move this lay on the table? And I think we're just a little bit premature here before we get the new legislation on what compulsory training is going to be required for councillors.
I agree.
Once we get that, we can look at extra training, and we've got to be very careful there, because if we're looking down, I haven't got it in front of me, as you know, but looking down, some of these courses are $635 per person, you know, it's $385 per person. So somewhere along the line, we've got to, we're going to have to do the compulsory ones as per the new legislation, and the others will be extras. So maybe we could lay on the table until we get all the details from the new legislation.
The councillor, you can move a formal motion that the motion be adjourned. I believe you get some support from what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm prepared to move that, Mr. Mayor.
Councillors, we're just going to halt the meeting for a second. I'm going to take it as a foreshadow that council, we're going to move to adjourn it, councillor, but my problem is I've lost a councillor off the screen, which is unfortunate. But I'm going to give you, Councillor Yench, a limited amount of time while we try and re-establish a councillor back on the screen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to second Councillor Arthur's motion. I think it's common sense.
Adjournment motion, yeah, until there's more known.
Do I have to put my hand up at the camera as well?
You didn't see.
I've been waving my arm off.
You didn't see how much the Councillor Arthur had his hand.
Oh, I did.
Mothering the camera.
I did, which is my comment. If I may add, I was going to vote against this motion. There are a number of things in this policy that need to be addressed, and I believe council needs to workshop it before it goes forward. Not just lay on the table, it needs to be workshopped. It just can't, it's got a number of problems in it that I've seen that needs to be addressed, and it needs to be workshopped.
Okay.
I will not be voting for it.
Well, we're not going to be voting. Well, we'll find out in a second, councillor. Councillor Arthur's moved and Councillor Yench has actually seconded. We adjourn this item. I'm trying. Give me a second. I've got a councillor that's fell off the system.
She's back.
Councillor Roundtree, can you hear me?
I can, I'm back. Sorry, my computer
right. So Councillor, I'm now in the position of the motion. It's a formal motion, so there'll be no more debate. I'm just informing you that we're into adjourning the motion till into the future. So I'm going to put that formal motion that this item be adjourned. All those in favour? Those against? So that's carried 7 councillors to 1, with Councillor Leng voting against it. Is that right, Councillor Leng? Adjourn.
Correct.
Adjourn to when, councillor?
Till we have some clarity around
Training requirements from the new Act.
For the new Act.
So we have some clarity around the training requirements, the new Act, councillors?
Exactly.
Everyone happy with that? I'm declaring that carried. 7-1, councillors. 7-1. Councillor Lang was the only one against it in the formal motion. Item number 2, revocation of enforcement of unlawful development policy. There's a recommendation there. Councillor Qualman, are you moving? Thank you. And has Councillor Roundtree the seconder?
Yes.
Any discussion around this? You're closing, Councillor Qualman.
Yes, closing, Mr.
Right,
Mayor.
thank you. Item 2, 9.2. I put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Item 10 is section 41, committees, and section 43, subsidiaries. There is no reports. Item 11, the last director of this director's community and corporates report, the annual business plan 4th quarter review. There's a recommendation there, councillors. Someone wish to move that way? Councillor Lang. Is there a seconder? Councillor Roundtree. Councillor Lang, you want to speak?
No, not at this stage.
No, thank you. Councillor Roundtree.
No, I'm good, thanks.
Any other councillor wish to speak for or against that?
Close.
Thank you, councillor. Put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? It's carried unanimously. Item number 2 is a lease of railway land from the Department of Infrastructure and Transport, which relates to council land council currently leases at Kermanduke, Tintinara and Tailem Bend. Councillors Qualman and Yench are the two I see first. You're moving that way between you?
Yes.
Question?
Qualman and Yench. Sorry. I can hear a voice. Councillor Lang.
Question?
Certainly.
Yes, in regard to the land at, I think at Canalpin, can we please have explanation? There's 4 residential houses contained in lot 13, I think it was. What is the situation? How, the effect of us taking over the lease of this land and the occupants of the 4 houses?
Good question, councillor. I presume they're excluded, but I shouldn't, should I?
Well, it's not
in the area.
Councillor Arthur.
It's not within the area that's designated by the map, and they're privately owned now. They're ex-railway houses that were sold.
Yeah,
They're all privately owned.
the map unfortunately sort of half indicates they are included.
Yeah.
That's my problem, but I would take it that they're not included. Councillors and Councillor Lang, my knowledge, and Councillor Arthur would be correct, I think.
Needs to be clarified first.
Yeah. So subject to that clarification.
An ex-long-serving member of the Coorong Council owns one of them, Rolly Kruger.
Very good of him.
Yeah. Could I just make a comment too about Tintinara? There seems to be what I think is, and everybody that I've spoken to down there is missing, because the actual land from Dit goes right down to Kings Road, right to the railway crossing. We maintain it at the present moment, but it doesn't show on that map. It's only going as far as and I see this new one has got the ex-sale yards within the plan too. And also the end bit alongside Northcote Terrace at the end is actually got railways, signalling boxes and a shed on there which is owned by, I'm saying, Australian Rail Corporation. So I'm just wondering whether that map is absolutely 100% correct too.
Yeah.
So councillor, if we could have shot these questions in earlier, it would have been good to confirm them. But I would take it that my understanding of these leases is as it was before. So if obviously we're not taking over control rooms, obviously we're not taking over people's houses. It's just as we've maintained before. The maps are somewhat not as exact as perhaps I thought they could be. That'd be my polite way of wording it. But I think we know the intent. There's nothing stopping us maintaining a road reserve that's not leased by us. I believe, councillor, either, in terms of the area you referred to down towards Kings Road at Tintinara.
Well, there actually has been added to Tintinara because you've got where the RV park has been established and the men's shed is now in the lease where it wasn't before. It was only we only had a right of entry to that.
So this is now part of the lease. So
Yes.
but you're still happy with where it's heading?
Yeah. It's just that it seems to be a little bit messed off. Yeah.
Yeah, all right. So
That doesn't surprise.
Perhaps we might get some clarification, but I don't think that holds up the motion, to be quite honest.
No.
Okay. Anyone else to speak for or against that one? Councillor Qualman.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I see there's a bit of a comment about Tailem Bend in here, and it says some anomalies have been identified on the Tailem Bend site that require further discussion, negotiation, and possible works. Therefore, the Tailem Bend lease will be treated separately. I gather we'll get some report on that later on to see what these anomalies are and why there's a bit of a hold up.
Pollution, no?
Yeah, that's what I
That's
thought.
correct, councillor. There's a few more anomalies at Tailem Bend.
Yes. All right.
Okay, but
Thank you.
since you were the mover, are you closing?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I'm taking the debate as closed. I'm going to put the motion as is the recommendation. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Number 12, infrastructure and assets report. There is none. Number 13, we have no petitions. Number 14, I have no deputations. Number 15, I have no public in the chamber. I have nothing submitted. Number 16, we have dealt with earlier. Councillors, I think I'm at the end of this agenda. Councillor Qualman, you have a question in relation to something?
Yes, sorry, Mr. Mayor. I know you're busy there, but I try to get you on number 12, Director Infrastructure and Assets report. I know there's a comprehensive report in the information document. However, infrastructure and assets is a big major slab of council's operations, and we've got a nil report. I just find that a bit odd.
To you, Mayor. We're giving the new director a little time to settle in, but generally a report will come when there is a need to discuss things. Sometimes there'll be no report, and at this point, we're letting Matt have a little bit of breathing space.
Okay, thank you.
So of interest, and I'm looking at the in and out, is there any, so I'm going to take that. So Corey, Councillor Roundtree's next and then information document.
Oh, that was my question through your mail. We're going to talk about the information document because I have a couple of questions.
Well, yes, it was not on my list, but I think we probably could briefly, if you've got a question around the information document, councillors.
Thank you. My first question is to Matt James. On the Canalpin pool, I'm concerned that the original completion date was listed as December 21. My understanding from speaking to the pool committee is that they need the pool open by October. November and December is too late. It's halfway through their season. So they're very keen. I spoke to them yesterday or the day before that the pool must open in October. And so we either can consider some temporary toilets or change rooms, or maybe we need to consider what work can be done that doesn't have a disruptive effect on them opening, or delay the building construction until the following winter when it's closed. But I really don't think the pool want to be closed up until November, December.
Matt, you want to comment on where that process is at and if it could be delayed till, I don't know, when is the swimming season finish, councillor?
About March normally.
March. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks for your question. That's certainly front of mind, the opening times for the pool. The intent is to get the procurement process underway and then discuss with the successful contractor the delivery program. If they're confident that they'll be able to finish the works in time for the pool, to open, that's what we'll do. If not, then we will delay it till after the swimming season. The intent would be to get the works that impact the use of the pool completed by the time it opens, and things less intrusive activities would be what would occur into the later months of October and November, but would be absolutely our intent to have the pool open as planned. It's very critical that occurs. It's something that will be forefront of our planning and programming.
We are acutely aware of the timing, as the director said. The other thing is that remembering, and this is only coming up today, that for the next 7 days, construction is to stop. And we know anecdotally that if you're building a house now with a contract, it can take up to 2 years for that to be built. So there will be, I think, a continuing backlog, but we are acutely aware of making sure that we can get that facility done, but it may mean that we have to work around it at some stage.
It was our intent to have a tender meeting today on site, but that was cancelled due to the circumstances.
So does any of this affect our grant money? Like, will the government be sympathetic to these delays?
So where we've needed to acquit the grants, we've worked out, and the government, whether it's the state or the Commonwealth, are also aware of the situation in terms of the building industry, and will give us a extension. The other thing is that some of this money is also ratepayer money, so it's a combination of things, but there's no up to date any difficulty with getting extension for these types of grants.
Thank you.
Councillor Qualman.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the information document, infrastructure and assets, second page down the bottom here, the Sealed Road Renewal Program. Council has recently engaged a road condition consultant to undertake an independent road condition assessment of the sealed road network. Now, I might have two questions. The first one is, don't we have enough of our own resources for someone to go about this job? And the second one is, what's the financial implication for this?
Yeah, thanks for your question. Through the Mayor, the independent assessment of road condition is undertaken every 4 years. Intermittent years are done by internal staff, but it's important that an independent assessment and valuation is redone, which enables us to set our depreciation and financials of our assets on a 4-year rolling program, which is aligns with when we update our asset management plans. So that's the reason behind using an independent. The other thing an independent does, it enables us to use some technology that measures some stuff that the human eye can't see, things like rutting, cracking, and the like, which gives us a reset of our asset condition. And what was the second part of the question?
How much?
How much?
I haven't got that figure on me. That was the consultant was engaged before my start date, but I believe. Can I take that on notice?
We just have to take that on notice, Councillor. You can't pull that up quick enough.
Thank you.
Anyone else before I go back to Councillor Roundtree? Councillor Yench?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Oh, no, wrong hand.
Yep.
Wrong hand. Sorry, I'll get that in a minute. Councillor Arthur.
Just following up on that, Matt, I saw a vehicle going around with 14 cameras on it the other day down here at Tinty. I'm assuming that was doing the roads. But I thought we had ASICs doing this. Is this a new contract, or is it them carrying on with the existing contract?
Through the Mayor, that was the vehicle. The company's called IMG, and they're a subcontractor to Aesthetic.
Sorry, Aesthetics. Okay. Thank you. I've just got a couple other questions quickly, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Just in the community facilities document, I thought Councillor Qualman might have brought this up about council fixing up a driveway when he was told quite specifically when he had a question without notice there that the driveway was the owner's responsibility. And
what, get a page number, Councillor?
Sorry?
Get a page number at all?
There's a picture of Michael there cleaning, rehabilitating a driveway. I think it's the ambulance station at Canalpin. It's been cut out and there's a front end loader there with rubble in it.
Yeah, I recall the photo, councillor. You
Oh, could I just, just have an explanation on why council's doing that one?
were,
So
yes.
the difference, I think, councillor, is between a private resident and a public amenity, which is the ambulance service.
Okay, no problems.
And your third question was?
Yeah, the key safe system for the Tintinara Hall, according to the documents here, it's been installed at the council office. Why would you install a key safe system for the hall at the council office when they're using the hall? That was what the idea was for when the office is not open, they still have access to the hall if they booked it.
You want to take that on notice?
Yeah,
as
I'll look
well?
at that.
Yep, we'll follow that up, councillor. I'm back to councillor Roundtree, I believe.
Thank you, Mayor. 2 questions to Deb, to the Director of Community and Corporate. The mock trial that you talked about with regards to training, can you just tell us a bit more about that? And before you do that, I just wanted to say thank you for the section Set 41 committee action list. I think that's exactly the sort of thing I've been wanting to see, that it can be tracked. We can see the work that is being asked and that it is being done. So thank you for that. But yeah, just wanted a bit more about this mock trial. Thought that sounded quite interesting.
Mock trial in your report, Deb. You're
Sure.
the last thing.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, thank you. In relation to the action list, it took quite some research, but it will certainly help us keep our finger on the pulse a bit more. We're also proposing to attend Section 41 committees to explain how about meeting procedures and motions, etc. So all in all, overall, it will make a huge difference, I think, to getting these things done. The mock trial was held by LGRS, Local Government Risk Services, and it's put out there for councils and staff to learn what will happen in certain events and to get staff who may attend court cases to give them a feel of what it would be like and what the process is. So this one was in relation to I guess, mishap at a event, and then what would happen in relation to the investigation to that, and then the court trial that followed. So it was really interesting for staff. Scary, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, any further questions? There being none, I've come to the end of the agenda. Councillor Lang, I take on board what you said. I can't always see every councillor's hand, believe it or not. It's not that I can't see it. I've seen other councillors online have some shaped bat or something. I'm just going to consider that because if for some reason the backgrounds change and I just don't pick it up as easily as perhaps I should, I'll give that some consideration in the future. I'm at the end of the agenda, councillors. We will try and see how we deliver the budget, what I call the budget meeting in the next week. It won't necessarily be next Tuesday, depending on COVID requirements, but meeting. But we're going to try and give as much notice as we possibly can, given some other limitations we have. I trust everyone has 7 days of at home, I suppose.
Are we going into confidence?
No, we adjourned that item.
Okay.
Is there any further things we wish to discuss while we're all on the screen?
You have the right arm? So good.
Sorry, I've missed something.
Feet, Hank. Still in pain there?
Yeah. It's only the nurse in the background, mate.
You're very lucky, councillor. I can't quite work out who's in the background with you.
Not.
Are we finished?
I think we're finished. I think councillors, I'm going to declare the meeting closed. Thank you.
Thank you. See ya.
See ya. That was good training.
Stay safe.
Thanks, Ash.